What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Epic Gamer, and in today's video I want to discuss something that is very, very important. And I know it's not just important to me, but it's going to be very important to all the other people out there that love Grounded as much as I do. And that is, what kind of bosses are we going to encounter in this game? Now, I know in the first game there were so many different bosses, and to be honest, they were all very epic, and honestly, they were a lot of fun to fight. Now, my personal favorite boss from the first Grounded game was, well, the first boss that was ever introduced, and that was the Broodmother. The Broodmother, to me, wasn't just, the first boss, and I know she wasn't that hard, but the fact that that boss to me was absolutely creepy. It had amazing soundtrack whenever she came down from the ceiling, and just overall it was just a very epic experience and a really nice boss fight. And of course you had the Priamantis, you had the Black Widows that are kind of like mini bosses. Of course you had the infected Broodmother, which is, well, she is absolutely a total nightmare, and especially on higher difficulties, that, her having 3 phases, it's like Grounded meets Dark Souls. So, sit back and relax, and I'm going to tell all of you what bosses I am hoping to see in Grounded 2. And we don't have long to wait. Grounded 2 will be releasing very, very soon. July 29th. Alright, let's start this. Alright, I know in the first Grounded game there was a Priamantis that you got to fight. Now, I'm not telling them to rinse and repeat, of course, but I have a great idea for a very scary but a very intense and very hard boss fight versus a new Priamantis. Now, hear me out. Imagine going into an area that is, not very dark, but not very bright, very dim, and it's surrounded by a lot of, leaves or grass, a lot of, vegetation, and you, of course, summon this monster. He comes down from somewhere, and the boss fight starts, but in the middle of fighting him, he disappears. And if you didn't know this, Priamantises are very good at camouflaging themselves and of course attacking, out of nowhere. And they're very quick. So imagine going into this boss fight with very, poor lighting, very creepy music starts, and you're going up against this giant Priamantis, and as you're doing damage to him, he literally backs away and disappears. And you hear noise somewhere in the vegetation around you, but you don't know where he's coming from, and maybe he sticks an arm out and slashes at you and then goes back in, or he just jumps out of nowhere or from behind you and starts attacking you. I don't know. I'm a big sucker for Priamantises. It is my favorite bug, and I just thought, adding an actual Priamantis but actually making it creepy, kind of like the Broodmother. I don't know, what's your guys' thoughts? And another good idea that I had is, throughout the backyard you're dealing with all these different bugs, and of course you have this giant bird flying over, which is a crow. Now, I'm not saying fighting a crow, but what if you could add another large reptile? Maybe like a giant frog or a giant lizard. Now, in the first Grounded, they were going to add a lizard over in the sandbox area, but it was removed. But I have a great idea. What if you added in maybe a smaller lizard? Or maybe keep the same lizard that was supposed to be in the first game, but add it into this game. Now, I'm not really sure how you could play that out because, it's a lizard. A lizard could literally eat a bug with one bite, and you are as small as an ant. But I think that would be a great idea too, to go up against some type of giant reptile. I don't know if it would be a frog or a lizard, but I don't know. I just thought it would be a good idea to add this into the video because I'm sure you're like me and you want to fight anything and everything, and being as small as you are and grounded, going up against something like a lizard or a frog, I don't know about you guys, but that would be epic, but also it would be terrifying. Now, I know in the first Grounded there was a small pond, and of course there were a couple little bugs that you could fight there, and of course there was a giant fish that was lurking around in the depths of the little pond, but you could not fight him. And there wasn't a very big variety of, water type bugs that you could fight. But I thought maybe for a boss fight that you could encounter, deep down under the water, would be the giant water bug. Now, a giant water bug is, they're not just big, but they're actually really, really creepy looking. And I thought, well, maybe if they have an underwater lab that you could go through, and maybe towards the end of it, you would get into an area where it is on, partially on land and water, and that is where this giant water bug comes out from, the depths of the water, and you have no other choice to defeat this bug to proceed inside this, laboratory. Now, I don't know how they can make it work, but I know with my personal opinion, when I played Grounded 1, I wanted there to be more stuff to do in the water type areas. More to explore, more, bugs and things that I could fight, more resources that I could find. And I thought, a giant water bug would be really epic, and there's plenty of other water aquatic type bugs, and of course they could add in, other reptiles. I'm not really sure, but I think a giant water bug or potentially a giant fish that you could actually fight, to me personally, that would be absolutely epic, to have an underwater battle with you and your friends up against this giant, water bug, or maybe both, a giant fish that you have to fight on land and in water. I don't know. I just thought it was a really cool idea, and I wanted to get all of your guys' thoughts and opinions on that, because I feel like they didn't add enough to the water areas. And according to like the map that I seen of Grounded 2, there's another pretty large body of water, so maybe we can cross our fingers. Now, another bug that I thought would be absolutely just amazing, but also very terrifying. Now, I don't know if you know, but there's a bug that's actually very, very deadly. And where I live at, it's a bug that you see quite often. And people call it by two different names. They call it the kissing bug or the assassin bug. And this bug is very, very creepy, but what makes him even more creepy is underneath of his head, down into his body, he has a large hook that rises up, and that's what he uses to kill his prey. It stabs it inside of it and basically sucks all of its juices out. And I don't know, just the thought of this bug, and if you don't know what it is, please go look it up. It's actually a very creepy looking bug, but I thought that would actually be a really cool boss fight, because you have this giant bug that's running at you, hitting you, kind of like the black ox beetle does, except, he can pull out this giant hook and lunge at you and try to hit you with it, causing you to be poisoned. I don't know, it's just another cool idea that I thought would be a really epic boss fight, and the fact that this is, a very deadly predator, that they could put it in a very ominous, creepy spot, and would make for a great epic boss fight, because they're actually a pretty large bug, and they're not just a large bug, they're also very creepy and very poisonous. Alright, so if you made it this far through the video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot of Grounded videos simply because, well, it's coming out soon and I'm a huge fan of Grounded. So if you want to support and help a new, content creator, and of course, helping my channel grow and sharing it around would be greatly appreciated. And a little bit earlier in the video it shows that my TikTok, so feel free to go there and follow me on there. Greatly appreciated. I post all kinds of funny videos, I post Grounded stuff, and basically anything to do with gaming. So if you feel inclined to, I would greatly appreciate it. Alright, now with that being said, another great bug that me and my son were talking about would be a great addition to the game, and I'm not sure how they could do it, but I'm sure it's possible, would be adding in a giant centipede. Now, I don't know about you guys, but centipedes are, well, they're very creepy, but on top of that, they are a very tough armored bug with huge mandibles in the front of their head. And they are very tough, they are very fast, and like I said, they could take a lot of damage. So imagine going into an area and something, is burrowing under the ground. Kind of like in the first Grounded where the larva or the grubs, you would see, something tunneling underneath you. You would hit it with a shovel and you would, dig it up essentially. But imagine going into an area where, something happens, the ground shakes, and then all of a sudden you see something very large sending up dirt and rocks in front of you, coming towards you. And when it busts out of the ground, it is a giant centipede that literally rears up on its front part of its body and lunges at you with those huge mandibles. I don't know about you guys, but I think that would be absolutely epic, but also very scary. And can you imagine the cool armor that you could make from a bug like that has, extremely, strong armored plates on it? I don't know about you guys, but that would be absolutely amazing. But it would also be very scary to go against an enemy that adds a new element. Kind of like where I talked about the praying mantis that could go camouflage. But imagine a bug that you're fighting and then he dives underground, you don't know where he went, and then he could bust out at different locations. He could completely come out of the ground and attack you, or he could come out for a split second, lunge at you, and then go back under the ground. So, I don't know, it was a good idea that me and my son had, and I figured I would share that also, this also amazing bug. So let's continue on, because I have so many good ideas. So another great idea that me and my son had was, we get their giant bugs, and of course, there's potentially a giant tarantula, maybe a giant scorpion boss, which I thought about adding a giant scorpion boss on this list, but we already have smaller scorpions, so just maybe there might be a scorpion boss. But we thought, what if we went back to the reptile side of thing? And then we thought about the different locations that we got to see in the different trailers, and we thought, what if there was something hiding underneath the hot dog stand? And we, just discussed it back and forth, and we both were like, what if they added a giant snake? An actual snake that is hiding underneath the hot dog stand in Grounded 2. Now, hear me out. I know that snakes, of course, are huge. They're big to us. But I'm talking about maybe a smaller snake that you could encounter. Maybe you don't get to fight it, but the fact of the matter is of seeing a giant, like black racer snake or something, burrowing towards you, and you can hear the ground shaking, and you see this giant snake that rises up. Now, of course, I would love to fight something like that. But I just thought, going up against, something like a giant snake wouldn't just be scary. It would be downright, you would feel so puny and pathetic to something that is, that big. Something that literally it wouldn't even bother eating you because you wouldn't even satisfy it. Something like that to me would be epic. Not even if it's just a boss fight, but being able to see something like a snake being, as small as you are and grounded, I think would be epic, and I'm sure that many people would actually enjoy seeing something like that. But they would be like, man, that was crazy. That was a giant snake. I don't know. I just figured that I would mention it here because me and my son thought it was a really good idea, and well, here we are. Now let's continue on because I have a few other bug ideas and one other thing at the end of the video that I want to discuss. So let's get it. Now, another giant bug that I thought of that would be absolutely amazing to see in Grounded 2, but it's not just any bug. It's a bug that's actually very creepy. It honestly looks terrifying, and if you've ever seen one up close, you would know exactly what I'm talking about, and that is a locust. Locusts are literally the plague of the bug world. They go through and they will completely and utterly destroy an entire crop, and farmers, we'll just say farmers, do not like them at all. But if you've ever seen a locust is a very large bug, but it just looks terrifying. It's got like all these sharp, jagged points on it, and it's got like a mouth full of razor sharp teeth. And I thought, man, do you imagine going into an area and being attacked by a locust, or having a couple of locusts coming at you as kind of like a mini boss fight? I don't know. I just thought it was a really good idea because I think that introducing more creepier bugs into the game would give more variety, but on top of that, it would add a little bit of a fear factor into the game, is that you're going up against something that is absolutely creepy looking and is also extremely deadly. Now, I know of course we have spiders, and I know people have arachnophobia, so I'm trying to branch out to where it's not all spiders, that you can add in other bugs that are also very creepy but would also be a great addition to Grounded. Now, I know in the first Grounded there was a couple of moths that you could fight, but they weren't really aggressive unless you engaged with them, and to be honest, they really weren't much of a boss fight. But I thought, what if you introduced a moth, but this moth has a twist to it? Now, I don't know if you know this, but sometimes on moths they have designs on their wings and on their backs that are a way of basically deceiving a predator in thinking that it's giant eyes looking at them, or something that throws off the predator so they don't get attacked. But what if you went against a giant moth as a boss fight, and it had patterns on its back, but if it flashed its wings towards you mid-fight, it would confuse your character, adding an element to the fight. So therefore you become confused or maybe dazed. And therefore the moth could get away from you, or it would be able to land a very hard attack against you. Now, like I said, I don't know if they could add anything like that, but I'm trying to find ways that when you get into a boss fight, it's not just walking up, hacking and slashing and blocking, but there's other elements that you have to play into account to counter the bug and be able to defeat it. Kind of like where I said the giant, centipede would burst out of the ground and attack you and tunnel back under, or the praying mantis that could camouflage himself. I'm trying to think of bugs that have a little bit of an edge to them that could help them in battle, but also something that you would have to learn and adapt to the fight to be able to defeat some of these giant boss fights that you could encounter in Grounded 2. Alright, so let's talk about a giant spider. Now, I know in the first Grounded you had the Oreweaver spiders, you had the wolf spider, of course you had the infected wolf spider, and of course you had the brood mother and the black widow. Well, black widows. And don't get me wrong, all of those spiders are absolutely amazing, and well, they're terrifying. Now, I'm not worried about spiders, but I know a lot of people out there do have arachnophobia, which is a real thing. My oldest son is terrified of spiders, and actually fighting these spiders in the game, it makes his skin crawl. But anyways, I thought of a great idea for probably one of, if not the best boss fights that you could have in Grounded 2 versus a particular spider. Now, this spider is not like your normal spider, but hear me out for a moment. Imagine going into a dark area that has a lot of grass and debris on the ground. And like I said, it's kind of poorly lit, it's pretty dim, and when you're walking across the ground, you can hear something, but you do not see anything. And when you get closer, you see two large legs come out from this strange little trap door that is underground. When you get closer, the spider bolts out at 1,000 miles an hour and comes towards you. Now, if you don't know, it is called a trapdoor spider. And if you've never heard of them or you've never seen one before, they are absolutely amazing spiders, but they are absolutely creepy and just they're nightmare fuel. And especially if you have arachnophobia, I highly recommend not looking up this particular spider. Now, this spider literally, instead of it making a web, it burrows underground, and it has basically a nest underground, and they create this trap door of debris and different materials, and they sit there and they wait. And whenever another insect or prey gets too close, the spider can feel the vibrations, and once it gets too close, this spider rushes towards the door, grabs its prey, and sucks it back into the depths of its den. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds terrifying. So if they could take what I just said and add that into a boss fight, when you go into a particular portion of the park, it's very dark. Maybe it's, close to, a picnic table or something where it's kind of dark and it's really creepy, and you see something from a distance, and you see maybe two large legs sticking out, or the door's just barely open and you can see something in there, but you can't quite make out what it is. And you get too close, and it comes out at lightning speed, and that's when the boss fight starts. So, or, it could be the typical, you summon this monster, you don't know what you're up against because it's hiding inside of its trap door, and whenever you summon it, it bursts out of its burrow and starts attacking you. But to add a good twist to it is the spider would attack you, you would attack it, but after so long, it would run back into its burrow, but make it to where it has more than one burrow and they're connected. So he could travel from point A to point B to point B to point C, and you don't know where he's going to bust out of. And maybe he will fully come out of his den, or maybe he'll come out for a very quick attack, go back in, and therefore it adds a whole new element to the actual fight. But on top of that, it's creepy, it's dark, it's a giant spider that is trying to eat you, and you are trying to survive this fight while this thing is running around very quickly, attacking you, and then disappearing. I don't know. I thought it was a great idea, and to be honest, I think trapdoor spiders are one of the coolest spiders in the world, and the fact that they are, not like your typical spider, and they're creepy, but on top of that, they are lightning fast. So, I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I really want to engage with my community. I know that I don't have a whole lot of subscribers. I'm trying to get there. But the few people that I do have, or if you're new to the channel, please feel free to tell me what your guys' thoughts are on some of the different, creatures and bugs that I've mentioned in this video so far, and give me ideas that you guys are hoping to see, bosses or new bugs that will, appear in Grounded 2. Now, sadly, I can't sit and make a 3-hour video talking about every single bug on the planet that they could add into Grounded 2, but I will say that the bugs that I put on this list are bugs that I would love to see as bosses. Now, of course, I would love to see a grasshopper. I would love to see a Dobson Fly. If you don't know what a Dobson Fly is, please feel free to look it up. It's an absolutely terrifying, huge bug that looks like it came out of a nightmare. And of course, there's so many other bugs that I would love to see. There's no flies in Grounded. There's no fleas. There's so many other aquatic bugs that they could add in that could add so much, to the game for, hunting these creatures down, getting different recipes to create different armors. And, imagine fighting a trapdoor spider and the cool armor you could get from it. Or maybe a giant frog or lizard that you could engage with. And the cool armor or weapons that you could craft by, you defeating these, behemoth of, bosses that you could encounter. Now, one other thing that I want to say before this video is over, and I know in the first game you fought against the Broodmother. She was the first boss that was ever introduced. And then later on they added the infected Broodmother, which to me, and it's just my opinion, is the hardest boss fight in Grounded 1. But to be honest, I truly hope that they bring the Broodmother back again. Now, hear me out of why. I think because she was the first boss that you encountered in the first game, she had, a creepy layer that you went into. When you summoned her, creepy music played. You're being attacked by, spiderlings, and of course you have this giant spider that is trying to attack you and eat you. And of course the infected Broodmother was the Broodmother on crack, and she was extremely hard, and she was like zombified. You killed her and she came back. You killed her and she came back. And it was a very epic and very intense boss fight. But I personally think they should bring back the Broodmother in some way, shape, or form in Grounded 2 as being one of the boss fights that you can encounter in the second game. And the only reason I say that, it's kind of like a callback to their first game and their very first boss that they introduced. Just saying, maybe it's just me. I just think that would be very epic. It would be really cool to see her come back again as another boss fight that you have to encounter. Now, I hope all that you guys enjoyed. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and if you don't mind, go to my TikTok, give me a follow. I post a lot of cool Grounded stuff, a lot of gaming stuff, funny stuff about games. At the end of the day, I play all different types of games, so whatever is on my mind or whatever I think is funny at the moment, I will post a cool TikTok. Some of the stuff is serious, some of it's me fighting different bosses and stuff like that. But if you're new here, please like and subscribe, and please leave some comments down below and tell me what you guys are hoping to see in Grounded 2. What boss fights that you would love to go into an area and have to fight one of these bugs, and give me some ideas. Like, tell me what would make this boss fight unique, what would make it scary, what would make the fight very intense. I don't know, it's just, I really like when you go into a boss fight, it's not just simple hack and slash and block. I would like to have boss fights that introduce different elements. I mean, I know you can get poison in the first game, and certain other bugs can give you sizzling effect, but I want some bugs that are actually going to give you, can stun you, or potentially freeze you, or knock you off your feet. Something to add some elements to the fight that you have to take into account while you're fighting it to keep yourself alive and to be able to defeat whatever bug it might be. So, with all that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see all of you guys in the next one. And just remember, Grounded comes out July 29th, so we do not have long, and I cannot wait. I will be live streaming Grounded on day 1 on TikTok, so if you have, or if you decided to follow me on there, I'll see all of you guys there. I'm out.